And now there's this. Tonight, there's a new push for capping the interest rate that can be charged on a loan, capping it to just 15%. You can't go higher than that. If you're going to loan somebody money, you can't charge them more than 15% interest. Bernie Sanders has been pushing for this Loan Shark Prevention Act for years now, but now apparently he's getting some help from a fellow Democrat, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. There's a mouthful. The idea is to stop greedy consumer lenders from taking advantage of the poor and the desperate by preventing them from making people pay up to 300%. Can you imagine 300% on a loan? And then tie it to their homes or their cars or other things that they own so you could possibly even take it away from them? News with Rick Sanchez, special correspondent Michele Greenstein's been looking into this potential act or law, the Loan Shark Prevention Act. Sounds like a winner.
Does. So let me tell you what it does. This would establish a 15% cap on interest rates for credit cards and all other consumer loans. As you remember, this is the same interest rate cap that Congress has already imposed on credit unions, which is why credit unions are exempt from this bill. So it imposes that 15% federal cap and then also leaves room for states to establish their own lower limits.
You know, you can't help but look at something like this and think that there's
long overdue.
Well, no, I'm just, the word predatory is exactly what really is taking place, right? Because, I mean, again, let's go back to what this is. This is poor people who've lost their jobs, single mothers who are sick, who are desperate, and they need $500 just to be able to pay their mortgage or to pay their rent. And somebody comes along and says, yeah, sure, I'll give you the $500, but you got to pay me back at 300%.
That's exactly what it is. These things are marketed towards people with little other loan alternatives, with astronomical interest rates, and of course these penalty-based charges. Basically, like you said, setting people up for failure, and they're marketed towards the poor, the elderly, those with no jobs, those who maybe were recently fired, people who are desperate and need quick money, maybe for a medical emergency or something like that. And this is something that Sanders, like you said, has proposed before. He's been talking about this for years. He actually introduced very similar legislation in 2009, but that was just for credit cards. This one covers all consumer loans. And if I may, I want to show you a piece of video from Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez explaining why this is important.
Okay.
And the way people borrow money today is through their credit cards. You have Wall Street and credit card companies charging people outrageously high interest rates when they are desperate and they need money to survive.
What happens when everyday banks start to charge higher and higher interest rates? Essentially, your credit card becomes a payday loan. And this is not anything radical, because we had these laws for a very long time in red states. We had them in blue states. We had them in half of the United States had usury laws until 1978 when they were repealed.
Who's against this?
Right. It's hard to position yourself against something like this.
No,
Absolutely.
I'm for screwing over poor people.
Right. I want to prey on the poor. Exactly. When you put it that way, it's hard to say. But many are also saying that this is definitely the type of proposal we need, but we also need it in conjunction, ideally, with other things like raised wages. As you know, wages have been stagnant for decades, and things like worker regulations that protect workers against these kinds of companies, especially against monopolies.
I'm Rick Sanchez. You found us on YouTube, and that's awesome. But you know what? I'm also live every night at 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern on DirecTV and Dish and cable and satellite, the RT app, and Pluto TV. I'll see you there.